So now we have a scene configured to contain a inventory GUI, and you can see that inside the inventory object here, and I've gone ahead and hidden the different items inside the inventory. So the items are still there, but they are just deactivated inside the object inspector, and that is simply because when the level begins, we haven't collected anything. So I'm just going to fold up the inventory here, and off screen I've gone ahead and created two completed script files, and I'm going to be going into these files and breaking them apart and telling you how they work. I haven't included a video of my typing every single line of code and statement simply because that would take too long. Much better is to include the completed code and to give you a concise explanation of how it works and functions with this scene. So this scene contains three objects that we've seen before: the cylinder, the cube, and the sphere. Now notice that I've attached to each item, if I select them here inside the hierarchy panel, you can see that each of these objects have an inventory item component attached. So here is one of them, inventory item, here is another one, and here is another one. So this is the inventory item script that has been attached to these objects. It simply says that these are objects we can collect. And you will see from the inventory item script that we really have only two public properties. One is type, the type of object that this is. So I have the cylinder selected here, and for the type we have cylinder. I could click on this drop down list and make it a sphere or a box, but in this case we want cylinder. And notice that we also have a GUI icon which represents this icon here. If I click on this, it will select the cylinder icon here inside the project panel. So in short, this links to the icon that should display when the cylinder is collected. That is the icon that should appear down here inside the inventory panel. And if I bring the code into view inside MonoDevelop, you can see here is the inventory item code. It's pretty straightforward. We have a enumeration structure that defines a sphere, a box, and a cylinder, and we have the option itself for this object. And then we have the GUI icon, which represents the icon that should display. And finally, we have an onTriggerEnter function. This function is run automatically by Unity whenever the player collides with the object, and it indicates what we should do when the collision happens. So here I'm checking the tag of the object to determine that what collided with the object was the player. And if it was the player, I then call upon the inventory class, and there is a function called addItem, where we can indicate what item should be added to the inventory, and we simply pass it a reference to this game object. Now the details of the inventory class are going to be considered in the next video, but this is simply the inventory item, and it should be attached to absolutely any object that can be added to the inventory. Notice that one of the things we do in the onTriggerEnter is that we compare the tag of the object that entered the collider, and we're looking for the player object. For this code to work properly, if I go back to Unity, we have to make sure that when I select the player object, in this case Ethan, that it has the player tag, and you can see inside the object inspector under the tag field that I have labeled this as player. So that ultimately is how the inventory item script works. It is simply attached to objects that can be collected. In the next movie, we're going to have a look at the inventory class to see how collected objects can be added to the GUI here.